right, I want to move on to topic number 3, which is, and you actually touched on this a little bit, which is why I didn't ask you some of my questions earlier, which is support for connected construction. So the ability to connect, earlier we asked about connecting internally. So for example, we're going through an integration process with Yates between the project site solution and their ERP product, which happens to be another Trimble solution. But we have this vision of connecting the supply chain. So connecting, you mentioned the trades have their own software, the architects have their own software. It's how do we connect all this stuff? So I'm going to start again with a poll. So I'll bring that up. And so improving access to data. Oops.
Next one.
Oh, it looks like the poll got duplicated. Okay, so what I'd ask you to do, we can use the same poll question, that's fine, is whether or not with your internal systems, but for example, the ability to integrate with your subcontractor or your ability to integrate with your design partners or ability to integrate with your owner so that, and I have this crazy vision that one day an RFI gets entered into one system. So for example, the trade enters it into their system, and then it just flows between the systems, irrespective of if you bought those systems all from the same software company. So I'm going to go ahead and move back to our question and just, Benjamin, have you talk about this, because this is an area where you and I have had some conversations over the last several months, and your thoughts about enter data once and reuse multiple times.
Yes, that idea of, and I have a friend that I've done presentations with before. He referred to it as moving from a paper locker to a digital locker. Right, the information was just in one location and hard to get to, and so looking for a solution that then makes that data available to multiple people. So a great example of that, and something that I'm really looking forward to as we move forward, is the idea of tracking the crews and the manpower that was on site each day, because that has to be tracked by the trade contractors, it has to be tracked by the general contractor, and being able to have that in one sort of central location, but it still is easy to access by the trade contractor. They can still input it in whatever system they're talking about. And I know you used an RFI for an example. The RFI might be one of the easiest ones to get to make that happen. Something like crew and equipment management are some of the ones that I'm really looking forward to in the future, where they take their roll call in the morning and they mark who's here. Maybe not even a roll call anymore. I mean, really connected construction where that person walks on site and they're running through the RFID tag, or they're scanning a badge, and then it's recording they were there and when they left and all those sort of things, because that starts to connect not just to accounting and payroll, but now we're in safety and we're talking about mustering and being able to know who was on site that day. And being able to check for emergencies, and then also grouping crews. As much as we're feeling the pain of COVID right now, I think it's going to lessen, but I don't anticipate it, and I'm not planning on it going away. I still think we will be trying to group crews for a long period of time, and having this group of 5 people work together on a regular basis and not shifting them from one to the next. I mean, actually, just for productivity's sake, we should have been doing that for years probably. And so, but trying to pull those together and see those connections reach out beyond a piece of individual software, something that's easy to get through. I think we've kind of learned that from our cell phones, right? We can have a single cell phone and we can, hey, get this app, and kind of pull things together. That same idea of being able to pull this information and have it there and usable, I think is going to make a big difference. Especially like if I'm getting deep into my BIM VDC world here, and you start talking about models for machine control, which is basically BIM for construction equipment. They've been doing it for 20, 30 years. They just didn't call it BIM. right? They didn't realize those models were the exact same thing, but they're fabrication, LOD 400 level models that are now readily accessible in my project management software, that are now federated and combined with the rest of my my models, my architectural, my structural, and I can see all of my civil and all of my grading comes into play with the building. And in that same platform, it's easy to get them from that Trimble platform in Connect to the machine itself that actually reads them and is grading or excavating or digging a trench, whatever needs to be taking place. That sort of deep connection is the stuff that also gets me really excited, because that means real productivity, real effort coming into that.
One of the things. No, please go ahead, Benjamin.
No, I just verifying I'd head down the right road for the conversation today.
Yeah. And then one of the things that we've also talked about in the past around, you talked about crew, so timesheets.
Oh, yeah.
For years, all I've heard is complaints about filling out timesheets. By the way, architects have the same complaint, filling out timesheets, trying to assign time to projects, and how can you make it easier to enter timesheets? And my question always was, why are you filling out timesheets? It should just be automated. And then we talked about weather. So there are companies out there that are looking to auto capture weather. One of the retorts from contractors is, just because that's the weather on weather.com doesn't mean that's what's happening in my project. But now you have sensors that can give you weather within feet of where that sensor is. You can drop these things. In fact, you can turn your people into weather stations as they're walking around. Little devices are capturing temperature and pressure and humidity and et cetera. So I think this whole, not just connecting construction so data flows between the supply chain, but also focused on trying to eliminate the data that the people have to capture. Because first, and people that know me well enough will start laughing or smiling, that I have this soapbox against daily reports. The whole concept that daily reports are captured by people. One of my running jokes when I first did my general contractor review is, who likes doing daily reports? Raise your hand. When do daily reports get done? And a lot of people would tell me, now I'm sure it doesn't happen anymore. I'm sure the industry has moved on, but it used to be they were done on Saturday because nobody wants to do them during the week. And I'm thinking, so how accurate is Monday's daily report if you're filling it out by memory on Saturday? And yet, when there's a problem on the project, what's the first document that gets looked at? Daily reports to reconstruct what happened on that project. So I'm super excited about all the advancements that are happening that will hopefully one day make daily reports completely obsolete.
Yeah, and so that road to making them obsolete, like you're talking about, is this other idea. When it was just stuck in a piece of paper, it was a person filling out that daily report. And I think that was the big flaw in the system. Whereas what it should be and what we're doing now is there's multiple people, right? Even for an individual trade contractor, they can have 2 people or 3 people in the equipment list. One is a idea that we are not trying to consolidate daily reports anymore is a difficult. It showed it lagged a little. Not very much there, Dan.
Yeah. Okay. If you could just, unfortunately, it was just as you were getting wound up with can you just restate that little section again?
So the idea that daily reports shouldn't be a person, right? Daily reports should be multiple people, multiple sources, because not one person knows everything that's taking place on the job site. So 4 different people should be able to take a picture of that day and post it as part of the daily reports to document what was taking place. I mean, I have seen job sites, like you mentioned on the weather. The rainstorm came through, but it really only hit the left side of the job site, because that east side that's just where the storm came through, and it dumped a 1/4 inch of rain there and nothing on the other side. And so one half is pictures of muddy footings and the other is fine. So multiple people should be able to take those pictures, upload them, compile that, because that daily report is the core piece of information. If there is a dispute, if there is a problem, that's what we're going to come back to because it was the live, very focus of information. And I summarized that a little bit, not quite as enthusiastic second time through. Hopefully that'll work.
Oh, it's fine. And that's one of the things we're also seeing. We're envisioning entering into an era when you'll have the opportunity to capture everything. So rather than being specific and getting away from filling out forms, because forms, most fields on a form are there because of a problem you ran into on another project. So we better capture that information moving forward. And one of the things I remember from my prior life working with architects and engineers is that these forms have become daunting, and the number of fields you need to fill in are daunting. And a project manager, it actually broke my heart a little bit, said that I don't know what happened, but I don't manage projects anymore. All I do is manage information. And that's not why I got into this career. I want to work with people. I want to solve problems and not just sit there and fill out forms all day long. So anyways, cool.
Along that real quick, I've got to talk about the checklist function. Before, our checklists were always off on the side, right? Our pre-pour checklist or our wall enclosure checklist for quality, or even our safety checklist for in the morning, right? Our pre-task planning to go through. All of those were kind of separate on. Now those are all coming together and they're done live in the software with the date, and they're right there with the daily report. We don't necessarily take the effort to tie them together because we don't have to, but that now all of a sudden you have that much more detail, granular is right there, and it resolves disputes. People come back a week later and say, well, what about this? We can resolve the dispute and we can get on with getting the project built, which is back to the project management, not chasing the paperwork.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me, God, I'm going to reach 20 years back to what I thought was a very progressive construction company back in the day when it comes to thinking about project management. And one of the ways they bonused their project managers was time to resolution on open items, because their philosophy was the longer you let an item stew, the better chance it's going to become a bigger problem later. And so they really encourage their project managers that if something's identified, sit down with the subcontractor, sit down with the affected parties and solve it in real time rather than kicking it down the road. And now it becomes a claim at the end of the day.